properties they've been doing, how long they've been investing. I know they said they've been clients with you. They could have actually been in real estate before they invested with
Now,
you.
of importance here is that, well, these are very humble, very, they're not bashful. All these people up here have at least $1 million worth of net worth from their real estate, not assets, net worth. So it's hard for us to understand the impact this business has to help people. These are living proof that real estate works, and some have a lot more than that. So with that, what was the question? I forgot already.
Maybe they could see it and say I have 2 houses or 200 houses or all right, multifamily.
A little background, just a couple sentences.
Yeah,
Thank
so I was lucky enough to get in touch with Fred about 4 years ago. I think it was about 4 years ago this summer. A mutual friend of ours, a mortgage broker, got me in touch with him, had a quick cup of coffee, and off we were running, looking at properties. And I don't think he thought I was probably serious at first, but I bought my first one June 4 years ago. And the way I kind of looked at investing in real estate was, my background, it comes from investments. I have a securities license, Series 7, 6, 65, all that. That's been my career, is in the finance industry. So I always knew real estate was a good investment. And the way I was kind of looking at getting into real estate is just to add some supplement income on top of my job. So if I could get a couple $100 a month, that's great. But what I quickly realized is that you can actually get $300-400 a month of cash flow per house. And I was starting to do the numbers. I'm like, well, I could actually find this as a freedom, financial independence, meaning I'm going to have more passive income coming in than I do expenses. And when I started to kind of map that out in my head, what this would look like, 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, that I was like, well, why am I investing in the stock market anymore? So anything outside of my 401k is going everything into my real estate business. And I'm still in a growth mode, still looking to accumulate, but at the same time, as far as what I'm looking to accomplish here is true financial independence. And that's really what I've been able to accomplish so far with Fred. I still have a full-time job, but I'm looking to probably exit out of that in the next couple of years and probably just do this full-time. So it's all because we're on the right path. 38. So, yeah. So I was born the year that you and Joe started up here a little.
He was born when Fred had hair?
Yeah. Anything else?
You had a question, I think, Fred. Just that?
No.
All right.
We practice this, guys.
So my situation's a little different now. I was fortunate enough to play football at the professional level, and when I retired, I was trying to figure out a way to leverage my money. What do I do? How do I keep all my money in one place without touching it and just making it grow? So I heard about Fred through a mutual friend, and then I ended up basically calling somebody, and they connected me with Fred. And I remember when I first met Fred, we met for coffee, and he just kind of talked to me about purchasing some rental properties, and I was totally against that. I heard all the nightmare stories, and I didn't want to get in the rental game. So we started doing flips, and I could only get about 2 a year. So about 2 years ago, I would say I purchased my first rental property, and I bought 3 of them, all right by each other. I just loved it, and I loved the cash flow. I loved the passive income. I loved the ability to potentially appreciate my properties while getting the depreciating and the tax benefits of it. So I just kept building my portfolio, and that was my first 3 properties I bought in 2017, and I think now we're at me and Fred are 26 now, so got pretty aggressive with it, enjoyed it, just kept going with it, and it was really with Fred a relationship, a friendship. Talk every day. I remember my first flip deal, he called me at 4 o'clock in the morning because I fell asleep at 9:30 at night, and we couldn't close the deal, so he called me at 4. My wife was like, "Who?" I said, "It's Fred." And she's like, "Oh." So that's the one thing I appreciated with Fred. Like me, I was always a hard worker, a hustler, I'd call myself, and that's the one thing Fred is a hustler. He's 67, and he's working hard.
He's been telling us he's 59.
So that's basically me and Fred's relationship. It's a real good friendship, but as far as the real estate game, we got pretty aggressive. Once I found what I enjoyed. We just kind of kept going, and now we're at 26 and counting. So,
What was the first question I asked you, remember? When I called?
how much money do you have? He basically didn't want me wasting his time. So.
Good morning, my name is Doug Riddington, and I've been with Fred for about 18 years now. And a quick story, I owned a small business and a beauty salon. And I had a lady come in one day and I told her I'm interested in maybe getting a flipper, because it was a hot thing at the time. And she said, well, I really don't mess with that, but I know a guy that does. And so she gave me Fred's number, and I talked to him. We had a cup of coffee. I think I had to buy it, though.
That's why he wants to know how much money you have right up front.
And, you know, the rest is history. I've flipped 179 properties and had 33 rentals, and all because of Fred. And this lady looks back, I'm sure, from time to time thinking, well, 180, 179 flippers and 33 rentals in 18 years. I wish I would have done that. The point is that there's an old saying, he who is good at making excuses is seldom good at anything else. And this video that you just saw is an excellent motivational piece. If you just pay attention to it, any of you out there have the capability of doing what Fred does, interact with people, build a relationship, and you can't be lazy. Fred calls me or texts me or sends me emails at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and he's up doing this thing. And I used to, when the market was really hot, I would go out at 9 o'clock. He'd send me a property at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd go out at 9 and look at it, and we'd have an offer in by noon and buy it that afternoon if all went well. And that's what you need to do, be on top of the market, get a client base that you can work with, like the 6 of us, and off you go. I'm sure Fred's doing relatively well financially, even though he's still a youngster. He's got a lot of good years ahead of him, and I plan on working with him for a long time.
What was the most expensive flip you sold?
$500,000,
How much did you pay for it?
a lot less. You know, and right now I'm doing with a friend of mine, doing a pair of condos down at the old market. And there's stuff all over town that you can, there's markets you can chase, there's $100,000 holes, and there's nice properties, but they all make money. And don't be afraid to go after any of them.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Joe Davis.
Yeah, that's all.
I have a question about that video. Is that from Terry Pettit or from John Cook?
Oh, John Cook. John Cook.
I thought she was gonna get up and start spiking balls at us. Well, Fred didn't, fortunately, he didn't ask how old I was. But I'm on the other end of this spectrum. And so when you get into this, you know, I never thought about getting out of it, but now I'm at the place where I need to get out. A few years ago, my wife and I had 30 single-family homes that we rented out, and we had a few other things going with other people, Fred especially. And so she sat me down one day and said, I hope you realize you're not gonna live forever. I had never thought about that. So I'm down to 15 properties now, and people say, well, who manages them? Well, I manage them. You only need 2 things to manage your property. One, you need a checkbook, and you need a cell phone. And I've been in this so often, and I know enough people that when something happens, I usually know who to call, or I call Fred, who do you use for this? And the secret to having those people work for you is you pay them promptly. And I shouldn't tell this on Fred, but for a while, we used to have a guy that did a lot of our handyman work, and Fred would call me and say, hey, would you call John and have him do this? He won't respond to me. Well, I'm a prompt payer.
Fred wanted John to buy his coffee.
Well, brought that up, one of the things I always noticed about Fred when we first got started is Fred never carried money. He said, that's what you spend, you don't carry that. But I did. We've been at this, yeah, we've been at this for a long time, and it's been a lot of fun. You know, and you get so, and if you know, you get so, you walk through a house and you know. And if you don't, once in a great while, Fred would say, no, I don't think you ought to do that. And I don't think I ever went against his advice. But it's been a lot of fun. I had a long career at the University of Nebraska. And that's how I met Fred. I worked for Del Weber, and one day he called me up and said, hey, this guy that works for the Scouts wants to start an Explorer program throughout the schools in Omaha. And I was in the College of Ed, and I knew most of the administrators in the school system at that time. But I've been retired for 20 years. And it's been a great ride. Ride it with Fred. It'll be good.
I'm Jean, and I'm married to John, and I was a nurse, and about 23 years ago or so I quit nursing, and we decided to buy rental properties, and so we just bought one at a time, and we did have a management company at that time, but after about 6 or 7 years or so, we decided we'd manage them ourselves. So every weekend was filled with packing up the kids and taking them to the rental properties, and they had to help us or keep busy doing something. But now we have 41 properties, and I manage half of them, and we have a management company that my son works for, manage the other half. And it is much more lucrative than the nursing would have been, for sure. And it is our retirement, and I'm very glad that we made that switch. So I'll let John do some more.
Well, since everybody's praising Fred, I'm going to lay it on a little thicker, okay? We think of Fred as a personal friend. He's straight as an arrow. He's got integrity. He's loyal. Whatever he tells you is the way it is. And I think he's also a great mentor. And so if any of you want to get into this segment of the industry, certainly worthwhile talking to him. Although I will tell you, he's not much for small talk. If you try to talk about politics or religion or the weather or the Cornhuskers, he'll be on the cell phone almost immediately working on the next deal. So he doesn't have a lot of time for small talk. But we think a lot of him and just love him as a personal friend. My first rental house occurred when I was a sophomore in college. There was a real cheap house in my hometown. I bought it for $4,000. And my plan was to fix it a little bit and then flip it and make some money. But I was working for an older lawyer in my hometown, and he had rental properties, and he says, well, you'll make more money. Just keep your money in that house, and you'll make more money holding it. And so then I rented it for a number of years, and I ended up selling it to the person that lived there for much more than I paid for it, and I carried back the paper at 10% interest. I mean, it was a heck of a deal, tremendous deal. And as Jean said, we probably have fixed up and managed about 70 houses or so all total over the years. We've been holding at about 40, and what we've done is we've kind of let go of some of the more ugly houses and try to get more valuable houses. And I think that we can carry those into our retirement a little bit better than the ones that are more intense management. I got a number of friends that are stockbrokers and investment people, and I don't want to be knocking what they're doing, but they might talk about a 10 or 11% return, but you can do much better with real estate. There's 4 different ways that you can make money off of real estate, at least 4, maybe more. But there is the cash flow. There is the tax benefits, the depreciation and other tax benefits. There is the debt retirement, and you always want to keep some leverage, I think, because that's how you really make money off of real estate, is by leveraging. And then the last one is the appreciation. If you think about it, let's say properties increase about 5 or 6% a year. Okay, so if you have a $100,000 house and it appreciates 6%, you've made $6,000 while you're sleeping. Okay, now that's in addition to those other things that I talked about, like the debt retirement, the cash flow, and the tax benefits. Well, now let's say that you leverage that about 80%. So now your investment was $20,000 and you made $6,000 off of $20,000. What kind of a return is that?
Very good.
Very good. Now, we bought a lot of houses with no money down, where we would go in, buy the property with a line of credit, and then we fix it up, and then we get it reappraised, and then we put it on permanent financing. So it was really no money down. Now what kind of a return is the $6,000 from no money down?
Can't calculate it.
It's infinite, isn't it? Yeah, you're the finance guy, so you're the one that's really following this closely. But I mean, isn't that true? I mean, it's a tremendous return, and you can safely finance those houses, and you can borrow them, and you don't want to get too deep into debt to where you can't manage them, but you can safely carry some debt on those houses, and that really increases the appreciation.
So Fred, I'd like to ask that question. How many of you, I'm guessing you two not, but the rest, how many of you were in this market in 2007, 8, 9, 10? I was assuming it was those four. And I just got done talking about, I read a number of articles in the last week or two that they're saying that the market is going through a correction, I think is probably the proper word. And you talk about leveraging the debt at the same point in time. So my question is, because there's this balance of security, you don't want the bank taking back the house also, right? Or your line of credit getting hammered on this thing. So how do you find that security for the guys that have not been through a correction before to make sure that if there's a downward correction in prices, that you do that? I have a follow-up question after I get an answer.
Well, I can only remember one at a time, so let me go on that one. I was in the market when, I mean, it was crazy. You could borrow 30-year money on a rental property. And that was great. But I would never borrow more than 80% of the base value, because I was worried about those corrections. There was a time when I'd go to a mortgage banker and say, here's what I want to do. And they'd say, oh, we can loan you 105% on that. And there were people doing that. Now, I don't really know what those folks are doing now, but when the correction came, they were in trouble. So you want to keep a rein on that.
I think too is start kind of slow and start easy. Get properties that are easy to manage. Don't get properties that are 40 miles away or 1,000 miles away like some people are doing. Sight unseen. When you're first starting, get a property that's maybe in your neighborhood, that's simple, fairly good shape so you don't have to do too much to it. And then make sure that you enjoy the business. I think there were some that went out and bought 100 houses, all on 100% financing, before they even realized whether they liked the business or not. They, the going got tough, and they collapsed, and they're not in the business any longer. So, kind of start a little slow at first. Make sure that it's something you like to do, so that you can weather the storm.
I think one of your answers even deeper on that is make sure you've got a property that's rentable, because then the cash flow, even if the thing goes down, if you can still service the debt on the thing, you're still long-term okay. Is that part of your answer there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, don't expect to rent a piece of junk.
Because in other investments, you don't have that cash flow to help service the debt.
Right.
And you're saying don't leverage the debt so far, which gives you a little wiggle room.
Right. It's got a cash flow, or else you have a huge amount of risk there. If you're just breaking even, you're not cash flowing. 10 years down the road, the roof, all that stuff that maybe you're not covered. Now you're out of pocket. You haven't lost any money. You're better off putting your money in a bond fund or a stock or whatever it is. So the whole opportunity of real estate is out the window. So make sure you have cash flow on that. You know, my strategy right now is I've been able to build up a portfolio. They all cash flow. Now I can start to reduce some of that risk with my tenants' money by paying off some of those early loans. So not only am I using someone else's money to acquire the property and fix it up and rehab it and then get a loan, but now I'm using all that cash flow to pay down some of that risk. So now the risk is starting to go down, and then it's just becoming a better and better asset in my portfolio.
Fred, can I ask another question before you dive in?
Yeah, 51% of the vote, go ahead.
Thank you. Being the two younger investors here, my strategy's been, I've done more commercial real estate than residential, but up to this point in my life, it's been more about net worth building than it's been for cash flow, because I've had the income, and we've got a lot of people here that've got the income.
Yeah.
And so, is that where you guys are at? And then as I get older, I would be more concerned about not so much net worth building, but about the passive income of coming in to replace the active income I used to make. So my philosophy's been, on this building, I took out a 15-year note, which people think's a little crazy, but I'm like, I'm not worried. The next 10 to 15 years, I don't want the cash flow. I want to build a huge net worth on this building, and then have that cash flow when I don't have the income later on. So can you talk about your strategy, and does it align with that, or do you see that differently?
So my strategy is a little different. So me playing professional sports, I got a bulk of my income and my retirement all in the beginning. So I was retired at 31 years old.
Yes.
So my goal was, how do I keep all my NFL money, but without touching it, and how do I pay for things now? So my goal with all these properties was cash flow, a lot of cash flow. So I'm not necessarily banking on appreciation or any of that. If I get appreciation, then that's a plus down the line, but I wanted cash flow now. So all my calculations, all my strategy goes towards every property I get, I want to cash flow $300 to $400 plus for each property. So mine's just a little different.
And your situation's a little different because you're retired at age 31.
Yeah, right.
Probably not happening for anybody else.
Right. So just a different.
So maybe I
I'm
should have
okay.
said, those who are not retired, I should have probably pointed this just to you. But I appreciate that answer.
Right.
I mean, he still has a cash flow goal, though. You know, Kenny and I are good friends. We work together now. But I mean, he still wants to build up that cash flow because there's no guarantees in life. You know, there's a lot of ex-NFL players that had that money and it's gone, right? Yeah. So he's putting that money in a good place where it's going to continue to have good cash flow. So him and I talk every day about wealth strategies and personal finance. So, but for me, yeah, you know, I was looking at, I had a pretty decent job in my 20s. I also had, and probably reason why you guys have your own independent business as real estate agents. You know, maybe you came from a different career, but you know, I had a boss that was just a jerk. You know, I didn't want to work in this career.
That's what they all think.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't.
I like you, Brian.
Yeah. I just knew I couldn't do it until I was age 60, 65. Like, I had to figure out a better way. So, you know, building that cash flow stream as aggressive, you know, super aggressive, going all in it last 4 years. I knew the numbers. I knew they were going to work. So I'm, you know, highly leveraged, but, you know, cash flow was really my main objective here. I'll worry about, I think the net worth or the capital appreciation will come down the road, but right now I'm focused on cash flow. I know my properties aren't going to depreciate too much, so they'll, even if it's
cash flow really is directly related to net worth, because if you're going to take something on a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage,
yeah,
you better have enough cash flow to cover the servicing of that debt, right?
Yep, exactly.
So there's a direct relationship. Fred?
Yes. I think we're answering a lot of the questions without even asking them, actually. Pretty good. So when did you guys decide that, when did the light bulb come on that you were into a really good thing? When did you say, man, this is really, really good for me?
For me,
the question for those who are outside there, because those outside the room are on speakers. Yeah. The question was, when did the light bulb come on that you're really onto a good thing investing in real estate?
For me, it was 4 properties in. The first property, I was just nervous. I was thinking I'd never be able to find a tenant for my house, what I'd get myself into. But once I found out how easy it was to get someone in there, get it fixed up, make it nice, and collect rent, I'm like, well, let's try number 2. Let's try number 3. Then like on the 4th house, I started to look at the cash flow coming in, like, oh crap, I could just keep doing this. No one's stopping me. No one's telling me no. You know, I don't have a boss tell me, hey, you can't buy a 5th house. So I just kept getting those relationships with the banks, and I just kept getting more and more and more. But I knew if I could get to, you know, 10, 20, that's my freedom right there. So I think 4, finally the light bulb clicked on. I'm like, I know I can do this.
I remember when I bought my first 3, and I think I was cash flowing $300 per property, and showed it to my wife, and my wife was like, all that work for, you know, what was it? You do the math. Yeah.
$900.
$900. Yeah. Times that by 12. I'm not a math guy, but so she said all that work, and you know, I ended up calling Andy, and Andy's like, yeah, times that by 20. I think if you had 20 properties, then the light bulb kind of clicked in my head. And what I love about real estate and just being essentially a landlord or owning or being in the rental investment game is just the freedom. I would say generally I work about 3 hours a week, and that's maybe driving into properties, checking on them, and sending text messages to my maintenance guys, and that's it. So I can make all this money, and I don't have to sit at a job 9 to 5, you know, crunching, sitting at a desk, or you know, hammering nails. I can just make this money really sitting on my butt. So that was when it clicked in my head, just the freedom of getting to do what I wanted to do.
I'm a little bit different. I've always enjoyed the flipping business. And my first house with Fred was a crack house. And
It was good, we had a lot of fun in it, didn't we?
That's why Fred's up at 4 in the morning, guys.
But with these guys, they bought a rental and the 3rd rental and the 5th rental, and the light bulb went on. As soon as we got rid of the black windows and the aluminum foil and stuff, and saw that we had a house here, and we put it all together. We put it all together and sold it, and we made money, and it was like, this is fun. I like this because, like Kenny, well, somewhat unlike Kenny, I was working maybe 3 hours a day versus a week, but it's, you can still have fun. You get your hands dirty, which I still enjoy doing, and I still enjoy flipping. The rental market, I've never really liked rentals because you can make money on them because you get that call last night I got a call at 9 o'clock. Yeah, there's somebody in the garage next door. There's not supposed to be anybody there, so I went over and checked it out. But, you know, the light bulb went on immediately. And you guys have access to all kinds of people, all kinds of investors, whether they get into the rental market or the flipper market or they build a portfolio. It's entirely up to you as to which direction you're going to, you know, send them or guide them or help them go to. And Fred has helped me go both directions because he knew that I enjoyed working with my hands. I dress like this. I used to wear a coat and tie. I hate coat and tie.
Amen.
I like my boots. And for me, life is good. The other thing people are mentioning is, and there's some of us up here that are a little over 60, retirement is not in my vocabulary. Now, you can build wealth and you can build towards a retirement, but I still enjoy doing what I do. And as long as Fred and I still have this great relationship about, you know, finding properties and fixing them or renting them or wherever the case might be, you're building yourself a future, whether you're going to retire or you're going to buy more people, find more people like us. It's all entirely up to you. And nobody's going to send you clients. Nobody's going to. You can know all your neighbors, your cousins, and your next door neighbors and stuff, but you really need to get out and work it and find people like us. Or Joe.
There's a really good book written by a guy named Fred Tichauer. If you haven't read Fred's book, you're missing out.
I do have some money, Joe.
Did we have that on camera? Fred has money.
You know, my whole career was in academia, and I read Fred's book, and there was not one citation in it. Guy with my background, that drives you nuts. But, you know, Fred knows all that stuff.
For me, I think it was when we decided that we needed to manage our properties ourselves, and we had probably 15 or 16 of them at the time. And the kids were in school, so I would work there during the day, and then we would all go on the weekend. But you have such a different feeling of ownership when you're doing the work yourself. And the more you learn, the more tools you need to buy so that you can do the job efficiently and good. And it was really quite satisfying. And now I'm really glad that we have as much sweat equity in our houses really appreciate all the effort, because it has been a sacrifice. We could have done other things, and we could have spent the money on other things, but this definitely was right for us.
I really never had that aha moment about real estate, because I kind of grew up with it. My folks had farmland and they had rental houses, and so I just kind of grew up with it and always thought it was a good thing. But when the light bulb really came on for me was on my second date with Jean, and I thought, wow, this person is good, and I need to hang on to her. We were both raised on the farm. We both, not the same farm, different. Down in Arkansas.
This is not Arkansas, he said.
We were both raised on the farm. We both had the similar faith background, and then to find out that she liked real estate, wow, that was really great. So, I'm so glad that she also enjoys it with me. I guess the moral there is make sure your spouse or your significant other is okay with it, because there could be problems there if you're not both on board.
Well, you probably, if you're married, need to talk to your spouse up front, like the State Farm commercial, right? And let them understand Fred may be calling you at 4 in the morning.
Yeah. Well, honey, I love you, but there's this problem. Fred's going to be calling at 4 in the morning.
Gotta sleep in separate bedrooms.
Fred, do you want to ask the last question or two, and then?
Yes. It's very nice that they're saying a lot of nice things about me. Keep in mind, I didn't invite my enemies to come here. But it's very nice, and this is what, to me, is the rewarding part. It's not about the money.
Speaker.
But you make a lot more money than you ever thought was possible.
Here's your mic.
Use your mic for the
When
people.
you help people accomplish their goals and objectives. I got two more questions. One is, Andy, what advice would you give the fine people in this room?
Join MOPOA.
Huh?
Join MOPOA.
Yeah, will.
That's
Yeah,
it.
that is a good organization, MOPOA. Be a student of the game. Just try to soak up as much knowledge as possible. Again, it's just pure luck. I was able to get connected with Fred. Someone, it was just a mutual friend. That guy could have connected me with any real estate agent, and Fred's been through it all. He knows. He owns real estate properties, rental properties. That's the number one thing. And so I had to work with someone that went through it and could show me exactly, how do you fix this up? How do you get a tenant? How do you do this? How do I do that? Like, every connection I have through my rentals is because of Fred and his connections. So you guys have to get dirty as well. You got to go out there and get a rental house. If you guys don't own a rental house, how do you turn around and tell a client to buy a rental house? So, if you really want to get serious with this game, do it yourself. There's a lot of different ways. I know it's a tough market. Maybe they call it house hacking. Maybe you rent a portion of your house, whatever it takes. But you got to be involved in this, and just gain as much knowledge as possible. There's so many different resources out there. Fred was a great resource, but I also went out and learned a lot on my own as well through podcasts and websites. And like biggerpockets.com is a great resource. It's the best website out there for rental houses. So just get involved, read, and get out there and experience it. So that's my advice.
I think that's a great point, guys. If you want to go sell investors' houses, to have credibility from the investor point of view, you've really got to go do this yourself
John's
first.
got to go to the courthouse and file some evictions.
I have an eviction hearing this morning.
Not mine, right?
Thank you very much.
I also find it very interesting is, you hear probably a lot of the same stuff they tell you that you get bored to death. Hearing it from someone else, I think gives you a whole new perspective. And you've got 6 different people all think real estate is great, so hopefully you'll take some of what they tell you and put it to work for yourself. More importantly, we have a tendency to pay for leads, do phone duty, do open houses. You've got 30, 40, 50 people right now that you could probably start calling. You'll be surprised how easy it will be to help them, and you can get clients for life. One more question, and I think we're going to call it a good. Is this a good time to buy? I hope you're gonna give me the right answer.
So
But I'm not gonna tell you what the answer is.
it's always a good time to buy.
Why?
That's two questions, Fred.
Sorry, I didn't put you on the spot. Why is this a good time to buy?
There's always deals. I know when I first started last year, when I really got heavy into buying real estate or rental properties, there's really great deals, and now the deals aren't as great, but you just have to make them into a deal. So it's always a good time. If I'm not buying, I feel like I'm missing out.
Anybody else having a different opinion?
Well, my opinion, not different, but I gotta tell you, it's really difficult to break that habit of looking for properties. I mean, I'm 81 years old, I can't do that anymore, I gotta stop, but I still want to do it.
That's an addiction.
One more and then one more. No, go ahead.
What was the
It's a
question?
good time to buy.
Good time to buy. When I bought this first house from Fred, it was prior to the crash. And when the crash hit, it was an excellent time to get in the rental business. The flipper business just absolutely died because nobody could buy a house. The money just dried up and went away. But it was a phenomenal time to get into the rental business. And if we're on the cusp of a correction, now's a good time to be out there soliciting investors or considering it for yourselves. Because if and when it does crash, it's a time to go after it. You'll be able to rock and roll, plain and simple.
I got one last question. Joe, you got 15 houses, right?
Yep,
Is this a good time to sell?
I hate this sell.
That was a leading question,
It
Joe.
is a good time, yes, from a financial standpoint.
Anybody
Guys?
else? Anybody have any questions, couple questions?
Yes. Trish and then Dale.
Me first? Oh,
Trish.
can you just talk briefly about the downside, about the people that don't pay and, you know, you're soft-hearted and you're like, I like these people and they're late and just real quick how you deal with that and I'm sure y'all deal with it differently.
The question is about the downside. What's the negative to doing this, and the people that don't pay and so forth?
That was always a tough issue for me because my background is counseling psychology and you're trying to help people. Well, sometimes you gotta have a little tough love. And yeah, there are always gonna be people that don't pay, but you gotta be on that right away. You know, you just gotta read all that stuff. There's a lot of good material out there that'll help you get ready for that. But, you just gotta be hard-nosed about it, because it's a business for you.
And it will happen.
Yeah, the answer is it will happen. But a part of this, to mitigate this, is to make sure when you're putting people on the properties up front, you're doing some due diligence also to make sure you're putting people in front that are gonna be less likely to default and not pay. Is that fair?
Right, it's all about the system you have. So me and Andy, we do a lot of research on what type of system we use as far as our screening services that we use, and we're trying to refine that every month. How do we, even to interviewing people on the phone, what to look for, even how they fill out an application. You know, the people that are serious just by, if they thoroughly read the application out online and fill the whole thing out, and then just talking to them on the phone. So we've gotten better at it, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And just to also talk about that, there's the biggest misconception out there is, oh, I can't believe you own a rental property. You must have to get calls all the time in the middle of the night about toilets and blah, 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 right? Well, that never happens to me. I don't think I've ever once got a phone call in the middle of the night about anything. It's all through maybe text messaging. So yeah, you are going to get broken toilets, sewage problems. You're going to have issues. But if you're working with the right clientele, that it's just part of the process. Would you? Again, Kenny said he works 3 hours a week. Would you rather work 3 hours a week dealing with these small issues, or would you rather work 60 hours a week in a cubicle, dealing with all the other political bullcrap you got to deal with in a corporate environment? So yeah, you're going to run into problems, but again, how does it outweigh the other problems you're going to run into?
I just want to say one thing. I think it's very important. All the negative things that it's a lot of misconceptions. I can tell you that 2/3 of all small businesses go out of business within 2 years. I've never known an investor that has a lucrative real estate investment business and treats like a business go out of business. Shelter will always be in demand. We don't need hundreds of pizza places in Omaha, 100 different bars. There's a good chance half of those, 3/4 will go out of business. This will never go out of business. You can never lose all your money in real estate. So you guys have to be the voice for this industry, because if you don't speak up and are knowledgeable, who else is the likely person that will say the real estate is the best thing for anyone that's interested in building wealth? Can you think of anybody else that's gonna be the voice of this industry? I don't believe a financial advisor or a stockbroker is gonna say, you know what, I think you should take the $200,000-300,000 you have invested with me and put it into real estate. I don't think that's gonna happen. So you guys have to be the voice, and you gotta make sure you give accurate information. There's no real disadvantages. Every disadvantage can be turned into an advantage.
If it's quick, Dale had his hand up, and then Kevin, so if you're both quick, because we're running out of time.
I'm guessing you all live in the Omaha area here, so I was wondering what area of town, you all have multiple properties, what area do you like? Are they scattered all over? Do you kind of keep your spot?
Mine are concentrated in the Benson area.
It's in Omaha.
Yeah, east of 72nd, north of Dodge.
I'm on the other side. By the way, don't worry about those phone calls. I tell my tenants they can call me anytime they want it, 24 hours a day. Because I'm in charge of my phone. And I turn the damn thing on.
That's the benefit of being 81. Kevin, and then we're done.
I'm going to tag off kind of what Fred said. There's two things you really need in life. You got to have a roof over your head, number one. You got to have food on the table. So with rental houses, it's great passive income. I love it because I've got several rentals and it's great for me. You know?
So Kevin, to those outside, is a testimonial that he has rental properties, he loves it, invest in it. So guys, let's give these guys a big hand and thank you very much.